Welcome to Backstage at the Enharmonic. I'm your host, Sean J. Kennedy. Today's guest is digital marketing consultant Seth HANES, who helps organizations, individuals, and businesses grow their brand by helping them better communicate with their audience and customers online. In today's interview, Seth talks about his rise from parking lot attendant to marketing manager of the Philly Pops. We also spend a great deal of time talking about his brand new book, Break Into the Scene, which is going to be released on Amazon October 10th. The book is a musician's guide to making connections, creating opportunities, and launching a career.
Hi, Seth, are you there?
Yes, Sean, I'm here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. I've been looking forward to this because you're kind of a Renaissance man. You have your fingers in so many aspects of the music business that I have a lot of questions for you, so I hope you're ready.
Sure. Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to answer and chat about anything.
Perfect, great. So I know you're in the business end of music, the performance end, so let's just talk about just music itself from the beginning. Do you have a clear memory of the earliest recollection of music having some sort of impact on you?
Do I have a clear memory of that? I do. It was actually, so I'm from South Carolina originally, in a little small town about half an hour outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, right on the border there. And I remember very, very distinctly in fifth grade, like at my school, band started in sixth grade. So in fifth grade, they would go to a concert of the band, and they would, if you wanted to sign up, you could go, try to blow into a saxophone for the band director or whatever. And so I remember the first time that I was like really kind of like moved by the idea of music was whenever I heard the sixth grade band play. And it's so funny. I'm pretty sure the piece they were playing was like Trumpet Voluntary or something. It's like this like ridiculously goofy little sixth grade band arrangement. But something about the idea of just like being able to like create something like that, just really compelled me. And so I auditioned for the band. I remember I auditioned for the clarinet, saxophone, or trumpet. And so I ended up playing the trumpet for about 2 years, and before I switched to the horn about a year and a half later. So as goofy as it sounds, I had I had never really thought about music like ever until I was like fifth grade, and I saw the band perform. And it just totally clicked, and that was that.
Wow, that's great. And but that's the teacher then. They must have been doing something right. Influenced you with the Trumpet Voluntary sixth grade band performance. So I wish there was a recording of that.
Oh my gosh,
must have been remarkable.
I'm sure it was magical.
Yes, that's outstanding. So you started in the school system. And I assume you continued with French horn all the way through. Were you involved with orchestras, concert bands, marching band, jazz band? Did you run the full gamut of everything you could do on French horn throughout school?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I never went into music with it was kind of the things where I had always just kind of assumed I would go into music. Like I never had considered anything else. Like I didn't really know what that meant either. In like a small town in South Carolina, there's not much going on. I mean, the Charlotte Symphony is around, but so I did like marching band and concert band was my primary thing for years. I didn't play in an orchestra until my senior year of high school. Like I remember the very first time I took and I only took lessons for a few years. I mean, I was not like super crazy serious. I just always loved playing, and I practiced a ton. I played a lot, but I was never like my family has no background in music. They don't have any concept of like, just it was just so like foreign and new. Like, no, yeah, I was just doing what I thought was fun, and so. But I remember the first time I played an orchestral excerpt it was like the Midsummer Night's Dream Nocturne, and it was like the big horn solo, and it said in E, and my teacher assigned it to me. So he's like, because it was on the youth orchestra audition that was going my senior year, and I remember I played it for him, and I didn't know what in E meant. I had never heard of the transposition, so I played it in the wrong key, and he was just like, "Well, you're working too hard. It's actually a little lower than you think it is." So like, it was so funny. So like, then I ended up going to music school and everything. But yeah, I mean, I had a very like down south marching band is like what everybody's into. Like orchestral stuff is not nearly as like culturally prominent. So yeah, I mean that was the large part of my like young music education was totally based in the band system. So yeah, and that eventually kind of led to the more traditional classical pursuits, but it was very much deeply rooted in like Southern marching band culture.
So I guess you played mellophone in marching band?
I did. I rocked the mellophone, which is a wonderfully awful instrument.
Excellent. So it's interesting. You said you weren't. A lot of my guests from an early time, they're basically obsessed with music, and they know they're going to do music. Something you said in there just prompted my next question. You said you weren't really a crazy musician as a young person. So did you do anything else? Were you involved with like baseball, or was there any other thing that was taking up your time?
Yeah, I mean, I played a fair amount of soccer when I was younger, and actually, it's funny. As of like this, in the past few months, as of the late summer of 2016, we're recording this. I actually just started rejoining soccer leagues to kind of get back into it. But that's what I did for, that was kind of my primary thing. But I didn't have any like one hobby that I was like really super serious. I mean, I was like really into like skateboarding. Like my dad like built ramps for me and my friends in the backyard, and like so, like I was like really into that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, music. It was just just kind of coming from like nobody in my family has any background in music on either side. They don't really have any kind of I don't say they don't have an appreciation for it, but like it's just a completely different relationship to it than someone that grew up like taking violin lessons at a very early age or something, where the parents like knew they wanted their kid to, try out this thing. And for me, it was all self-directed. I mean, everything I've ever really done has always been very self-directed. I've never really had, I was never really like, pushed in any one direction as like a kid or as a student. So it was all very self-directed. There was no like, I probably never listened to a classical piece of music until I was like, my late teens. like actively, I mean, I went and pursued to listen to a piece because I wanted to listen to it,
Right. Seth, when he was 17, probably would not recognize Seth now.
Yeah, it's a funny thing how that all works, but yeah, it's very different. I mean, so, what I do now is very different than what I ever envisioned I would do like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even a year ago in some aspects of my career, but.
So that's perfect. It leads me to my next question, actually. I first came in contact with you when you were the marketing manager for the Philly Pops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You had reached out. I was on one of the gigs, and you were giving us, the play-by-play of what we needed to do and all that type of stuff. And could you just tell the listeners how the transition happened from French horn player to marketing manager for the Philly Pops? Like, what was in between all of that?
Yeah,
I know it's a lot, but you could condense it.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I should kind of preface everything that I do by saying that I've never really been all that interested in just doing one thing. I have like just playing. Like I can't imagine just playing. Like to me, I couldn't do that. I just have so many other interests, so that I'm like really passionate about pursuing and doing. So how I got into being the marketing manager for the Pops was it's actually a pretty funny story. So it's like completely and totally random how that happened, but I basically this is going to sound so ridiculous, but it actually all starts from my job when I graduated school. Like I was working in a parking garage downtown valeting cars. That was kind of my just day job to pay the bills, and I was gigging. I was at the time I was doing some teaching artist work around town or just getting into it. And so I was always really interested in marketing and business as of about halfway through my time at Temple, where I did my undergrad. And so I was working in the parking garage, and I'm a really big reader. I read a lot. So I would literally every day just take a book with me to work. And whenever it was slow, whenever there was nothing going on, I would just sit down in the office there. And this was working at the Union League here in Philadelphia, which is a social club. And I basically would sit there and read all day, every day. I just brought a book with me. I've got, at this point, I've got there hundreds of business books and things. And I'm a very voracious reader. And so I would just sit at the garage all day, and I promise this is going somewhere. I would just sit at the garage all day just kind of reading. And the president of the Philly Pops is a member of the Union League, and as is one of the other people in the leadership roles there as well. So, and for just like to kind of speed this story up, basically there was a situation where the original founding music director of the organization they were basically having a big dispute about like the orchestra's future. And at this time, the Pops had been under the umbrella of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and when they went into their bankruptcy filings, that basically pulled the Pops in with them. So the board decided to split. So they had to essentially restart this entire orchestra from like the ground up. And the president, one of the board members, was kind of stepping in as the president, and his name's Frank. So Frank was, and you might even know Frank, Sean. I'm sure you've met him. So Frank was a member of the Union League, and so this was kind of like a little bit of a pissing match in the press. Like it was a really messy transition because it was just classic kind of like disputes about compensation and this and that and the other thing, the direction of the orchestra. So there was this big mess going on with this transition. So I was reading all of this and kind of following along, and so I just saw Frank, and I saw him every day come into the Union League. I saw him literally every day. So I just went and started talking to him one day. I was like, my mindset was, I'm a valet. Like, I have absolutely nothing to lose here. So I'm just going to go talk to this guy. And he's like one of those people that he's a very approachable guy. He's very nice, very personal, but like, he's like a very kind of like big deal, quote unquote, around that club. Like, he's like the kind of guy that all the staff is like very aware of, and like, he's like, well, maybe you shouldn't talk to this guy. Like, he's very busy. We don't want to bother him, yada, yada. And like, I just didn't care about that at all. So I just saw him standing there one day. So I just went up and said hello to him. And I was like, hey, I've been following what's going on in the press. I mean, I've been reading about this. I'm a musician, but I'm also really interested in the business side of things. And Frank is a very successful businessman as well. So I just started talking to him, and he gave me his card. And mind you, at this point, I'm still a valet. I just finished school, and this is probably 8 months after I finished school, something like that. And so I just started talking to him, and then he gave me a card. So I emailed him, and he didn't respond. So I saw him again, and I just said, hey, how's it going? And, just saying hello. And he was like, oh, I didn't email you back. Send me another email. So I did. Then he said, call him. So I did. He didn't answer. So he said, call the marketing person at the Pops. I did. They didn't call me back. And eventually he was like, okay, this went on for like a month. And he probably regretted giving me that card. But like, I just kept talking. I just kept saying hello. It wasn't like a hard sell. It wasn't like pushy or annoying. It was just, I would literally see him every day. And eventually he just said, all right, you know what? I've got 30 minutes next Thursday at 4 o'clock. And so he was like, meet me at Chris's Jazz Cafe, which is right next door to the garage and in the club. So I was like, oh, my God, yes, this is awesome. So I took the entire day off work. I went and met him there, and he was on the phone for probably 20 of the 30 minutes we were there. But he basically at the end of it was like, you know what? Come into the office on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m. and meet with the vice president. So his name is Lewis. So I went in and met with Lewis at like 8:30 in the morning. At this point, I had never actually had a job in marketing. I had just read a lot of books about it and done some stuff on my own. And I walked out of there as a paid intern to the Philly Pops at $15 an hour. And over a couple of years went by, the organization was growing and changing and evolving. And I just kept moving on up the ranks there, and I ended up being the marketing manager for about a little over a year or so. So that was pretty much how that happened.
Wow. Sounds like a Hollywood movie plot almost.
I know. It sounds so ridiculous. Like, I will, if anybody's interested, I will sell them the rights. But,
perfect.
But yeah, that's how that happened. It's totally goofy. There was no application. I had never at that point ever even applied for a job in marketing. I was just interested in it and knew a lot about it from reading, but it was all like abstract knowledge. I didn't have any concrete like application of the ideas, but I knew all the concepts. I just had it like put them in the like I hadn't implemented them. But yeah, that's how I got my first job in marketing and how I ended up being the marketing manager for the Philly Pops.
A lot of times I run into different, marketing people and people who do the logistics for orchestras and entertainment organizations.
Sure.
And it seems to me that the most successful, I don't know if it's a reflection of me or a reflection of them or both, but it seems like the folks that are in those positions that are musicians, they seem way more effective to me than people that are trained in business only. Could you speak to that a little bit about how musicians in these business positions, talking to musicians, I think actually get more done than just straight business people?
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that I think is really, really important, and like I don't want to like get into a huge conversation about like the effectiveness of like the administration of organizations, but like it's one of the things that I would say, just as someone that has a very, very thorough understanding of both sides of the fence, I think that people that come from a background of both, like actually having like either training in both or just experience in both, I would say they're definitely easier to work with for everybody, because the challenge with, I think that a lot of, like the musicians have and the administration has is that they live in very different worlds. So, like, so someone that works in the office of, say, like an orchestra, any performing arts organization, often, they're very removed from the artistic side of things. But and on the other side of that, though, like the musicians are very removed from like the business side of things. And I would say that the people that have an understanding and can engage intelligently in both sides of it are much more, in my experience, are much more effective at their positions, because I think you have to have that understanding and background to do the job effectively. And I think one thing that I really do truly believe is that every musician that does any kind of like work for organizations, that does work for like orchestras, whether they're a freelancer or they're playing in regional symphonies or maybe it's a major symphony, I think every musician would really benefit from taking a little bit of time to get to know the other side of the business, because there are ways that that the administration can help musicians out and musicians can help the administration out. They can help each other out tremendously, and they both need each other. And the people that kind of cross those boundaries and are ready to help on either side of the fence, I do find that they're probably more effective in their position. So, yeah, I mean, I would encourage any musician listening that isn't familiar with like the administration side of things, or maybe doesn't quite understand why things are the way they are. I mean, sometimes there are incredible, I mean, God, look at all these just labor negotiations that are constantly going wrong with orchestras. I mean, I really think that a lot of that could be, it would be a lot more productive if everybody had a better understanding of where the other like side was coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you articulated it perfectly. Yes, I think so, because it's kind of like a Venn diagram. You have musicians here, you have administration here, but I think the compromise, you have to both be in the middle and, like you said, understand where both sides are coming from. I had a project that I was pitching. I had a project that I was pitching to a publisher a couple of years ago, and I was very passionate about it, and I thought it was the next great thing since sliced bread. But I submitted it to this publisher, and the guy who I was rejected for the project. But it was one of the best things that ever happened, because the guy that rejected it was thoroughly immersed in the business end and the music end. And when he explained the business end of it to me, he said, "Listen, I like your music, but these factors will prohibit me from doing this project." I totally understood, because he hit it from both ends, not just like a project that was rejected, like, nope, we don't want to do it. That wouldn't have helped me. He gave me both sides of the spectrum, and I was like, now I understand why this won't float. Which was great, and it's what you just said. Yeah.
Yeah, and just kind of one little final thought to kind of piggyback on that is that I think that one of the biggest challenges a lot of like folks that have in any kind of artistic like pursuit, that I mean, a lot of the time people are just, to be completely honest, most people are like absolutely avoid thinking about the business side of things at all times. And I think there's this tendency to think that, like, oh, well, I'm an artist, I shouldn't have to deal with XYZ thing. Like, that's not relevant to me. But I really, really disagree with that, actually, because I think the more you can understand what the other person cares about, the more effective you can be in getting more work for yourself or your colleagues, or being more useful to the organization, so they want to use you more. I mean, like, I can think of a few things, like, even just from my time, at this point, I've done consulting work and worked for and with tons of performing arts organizations in various capacities. And the musicians that are enthusiastic about both sides of it and want to help and want to engage in the process, to be quite frank, they're the ones that get the most work, because the people that want to help, want to engage, want to be more part of the conversation are the ones that are probably going to be the most valuable to the organization, right? Because a lot of people just want to, I just want to show up, I just want to play, I just want to like do my thing, and that's great. Like that's totally fine. You do your thing, I'll do mine. Nobody's right or wrong here, but like, the people that reach across the borders, like we're talking about here, to understand where the other ones are coming from, like, everybody can help each other out if they're more proactive in doing that. I mean, I've seen it countless times in different organizations of all levels of, whether these are multi-million-dollar performing arts organizations that are playing in, halls like the Kimmel Center and Horizon Hall or Carnegie, or these small, really like kind of scrappy startup like chamber groups and things. Like the people, no matter what the situation is, the people that are most engaged in the entire process and trying to help and be useful and be valuable to each other are the ones that get the best shot at the best work. I mean, from my experience. So, I mean, I think, and that's not to say it's always the case, but it's definitely something that both administrators and musicians could do more of, I think.
No, I totally agree with that, and I'm going to turn it back. I'm going to say thank you to you. Your podcast actually influenced me when you had Chris Coletti on, and it was wild because I found myself on your website listening to a trumpet player talk, and I'm a percussionist, and I don't know how I got to your website, but it was great. And I checked out some of your other stuff. And again, it's not just Chris is a great example of what you were talking about. He's a great musician. He probably could just play trumpet and that's it. But he doesn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he does so much more. He has a great blog of his own. He's out there in so many things. He runs the social media for the Canadian Brass, makes himself available, and it's just that giving back and communicating and trying to show more about your passion to as many people as possible. And for a drummer, me, to be on your website listening to a trumpet player talk, it was pretty incredible that you got me there somehow.
Wow, well, I'm thrilled to hear that. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And to continue even more with this, you have written a book that's going to be released soon. I think the book is called Breaking Into the Scene.
Yeah,
and why don't you tell us about that? Yeah, why don't you tell us about the book?
Yeah, so the book is called Breaking Into the Scene. It's being released on October 10th. It will be available on Amazon and Kindle and paperback. So the book, so if anybody is interested in this, you can just go to breakintothescene.com. But what the book is basically I wanted to create the resource that I wish I had whenever I was first getting started getting freelance work. So I wanted to write from the perspective of someone that is either just getting started, just moving to, say, a new city, or is trying to expand the pool of work they do. So established people that have already been doing XYZ kind of work, but want to branch out and diversify whether that's playing or teaching or whatever it is, or something completely different. And so I wanted to write the book that I wish I had access to, because I remember very, very vividly the frustration of being, when I was really just getting started, and this was not all that long ago, but I remember reading all these books and thinking, well, this sounds great, but that doesn't mean anything to me as an individual person that has seemingly no connections. I didn't really know how to start meeting people. I didn't know how to start kind of like running in those circles, and because I was always thinking things like, well, why would they want to hire me? Like, I'm not ready yet. Like, they're not going to pass off to work to this random guy who's like going to try to take. I mean, I was thinking about it from the perspective that like they were like nobody would want to hear from me. So I remember sitting there thinking, like, man, I just didn't know what to do. And I read a lot of the books, and there's some great books on the topic of music careers, like Angela Beeching's Beyond Talent is fantastic. David Cutler's Savvy Musician. There's a book, The Musician's Way. So there's a lot of these books out there, but I found that a lot of them, from my perspective, there was a lot of talk of like what's possible, so kind of like high-level thinking, like 30,000 feet view, and very little about how to take the first steps, because that's the hardest part with anything. I mean, I've experienced it countless times, and I hear from readers. I mean, it's crazy how many people read my site, musiciansguidetohustling.com, but like I hear from people literally all over the world, and they all have the same challenges I heard over and over and over again. So the one thing that this book does is I wanted to kind of make the argument that you as an individual can influence the amount of work that you do. You have absolute control over how much work you can generate for yourself. It's challenging, it's tough, but it's absolutely possible if you go about it from the right way. So there are kind of like a couple of big topics that I cover throughout the book. First off is a lot of people look at it from the perspective of like, there are no new opportunities out there. All of the things that are out there, there are a ton of people doing. I mean, there are a ton of people that are available for those gigs. So it's hard to kind of crack into those quote unquote markets that are really saturated with people that have already established themselves as the go-to players for that. So I'm more interested in actually creating new opportunities versus fighting for existing opportunities. And I always kind of think about it from the perspective of looking at it as like a pie, and everybody's trying to get their little piece of the pie, their little cut, they're trying to get as much as they can, but there's only so much pie available, right? But whenever you look at it from the perspective of creating new opportunities, I'm much more interested in, like, yeah, you can have the existing pie. Like, I don't really care about that. I'm more interested in growing the pie, like creating more opportunities, because the more things that you're creating for yourself, that's inherently going to be creating work for others, which is going to compound, and it's going to be better for everybody. So I'm a huge advocate of creating your own opportunities. And the other big thing that people struggle with is networking, or they have so much trouble knowing what to say, who to reach out to. How do you know who to reach out to? Like, how do you know who they are? And so I wanted to break down all of these barriers as much as possible. So I do things like I give people exact email scripts they can use to reach out to anybody. It's literally a cut and paste template they can use. And I know this works. I've used it myself hundreds of times. Is this one email script that I just use over and over and over again and just change and adapt for the situation? You know, it's made me a lot of money. It's opened up countless opportunities that have led to other opportunities. And, you know, so it's things like that, like adding the script in, that I wanted to do to make it as simple as possible for people to read the book and take action on the material and start getting results. So that's the kind of big gist of the book, is really how can people read and then take action on the material to get results very quickly. That's my goal with the book. I mean, I had one beta reader who was they'd been a reader on my site, and they were an early reader of the book, and they landed a $1,200 gig in one afternoon by just sending a couple of emails to people. And it probably took her, she's a cellist in New York. It probably took her like maybe a couple of hours on like a Saturday afternoon to do that work. And it immediately opened up one opportunity for like $1,200. Like, are you kidding me? $1,200 is awesome, considering this is a book that costs like $15 or something. You know, like that's insane. So it's just these simple things that people can do to get moving. And the book dives, much more into all of this. But those are that's kind of the general overview of what the book is, what I hope to accomplish with the book. And one last thing that I will say on that, if anybody's interested, go to breakintothescene.com and click on bonuses, and you can download some of the free bonuses from the book without even buying the book. Like, if you want to buy the book, awesome. That's fantastic. Great. I hope you do, and I would love to hear from you. But go, if you're interested at all and like just curious as to what are these scripts, what is this book, if you go to breakintothescene.com, you can actually just download the bonuses for, like, they're totally free. They're just there on the site. All you have to do is click the button, and you can check it out. It's there. It's just breakintothescene.com. So that's the gist of the book, and I hope people check it out.
Yeah, that sounds great. It sounds like a very practical resource to get boots on the ground right away and to start moving forward. Yep.
Yeah.
That's great. I can't wait to check it out myself.
Part. Yeah, that's the hardest part, man. It's just like taking those first steps. Because once you can get one gig, like if you can get one, you can get two, right? If you can get two, you can get five. You will start meeting people. You'll start connecting with your colleagues, and you can go from 5 to 10 to 25 or 50 or whatever it is. However much you choose to like continue scaling this up and growing and investing time in the process, you will see results. I mean, that's like, I have no doubt that will happen for anybody that reads and follows the steps outlined in the book. But yeah, absolutely. Getting the boots on the ground is what I'm most interested in, is getting people, get some skin in the game right away and start getting results.
Outstanding. Yeah, I can't wait to read it. And I have a lot of students and colleagues that work with, older kids and college students that have just graduated. So it sounds like it's going to be a great resource for them to add to their bag of tricks.
Yeah, I hope they do. I mean, it would be great to share it with them, and I'd love to hear any feedback anybody has on it as well. Thoughts, ideas, improvements, anything would be great.
Great. All right. One last question that I ask all of my guests.
Sure.
And I love the answers because it runs the gamut. I get so many responses to this question. So here goes. Do you still listen to music for fun?
I do listen to a lot of music, but I will say I listen to almost no classical music for fun. I listen to very little classical music, like leisurely. I love attending performances. I don't do it as much as I should, and I would like to, but I love attending live performances. But in terms of just like listening on like Spotify or iTunes or Pandora or while I'm driving, I don't really listen to that much classical music. But I listen to a lot of other
because you're around it? I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
No. Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's one of those things where I just kind of. I mean, it's like everything else in my like kind of life. I just have so many things I'm interested in that, and I feel like I'm around it. Yeah, exactly what you said. I feel like I'm around it so much that like I won't say it's less enjoyable to listen to, but it almost feels like work sometimes when I'm like listening to classical music. And that's not to say that it's like work or anything, but my mind just kind of like my mindset listening to something classical is very different than it is just listening to like, an old like like Coltrane record or like a indie band or like what I'm listening to while I'm running or whatever it is. It's like a different mindset for me.
I understand totally. It happens to me. It goes in phases. Like if I'm on a lot of orchestral gigs, I won't be listening to orchestra music in the car. It's
right.
Depends what I'm doing at the time, what I'm listening to. I forgot to ask you about music and performing. The New City Brass. You're the founder and French horn player in that. Where do you guys gig?
Yeah, the New City Brass was something that I started when I graduated school. It was kind of my first real project I started where I was like, I want to create my own gigs. I'm tired of waiting around and hoping other people call me. I want to drum up work for myself and my friends. I want to go out and play with my friends. So the New City Brass was really a project that started pretty much exclusively just as a place for me to play with my friends, and we tried to get as much work as we could. And so we did. It's not something that we do that I like work as hard on now. We still have a handful of gigs throughout the year that we always do, but really it was my first attempt at starting my own thing. And so I basically the way it started, I mean, I can give a real quick kind of funny story about like how it actually started because it ties right into like the book and what we were talking about. But I literally sat down one day and I decided, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm just gonna make this happen. I'm just gonna get started. I don't care if it's right or wrong, good or bad. I just want to get started. So I literally sent a text to my friends and I was like, hey, are you guys around at 1 p.m. on Saturday to get together and read through a couple of things? The reason it was 1 p.m. is because it would be my lunch break from the parking garage, and which is right down the street from Curtis. So three people responded. My buddy Nozomi, who's a trumpet player, my friend Lee, who's a tuba player, and then my friend Patrick, who's a trombonist. And we literally sat down. I was like, okay, I've got four guys. We got a trumpet, a horn, trombone, and tuba. So that week, I just put together a couple of quick arrangements for that ensemble, just a quartet. There's like no music for that quartet, but I went ahead and put it together. I just slapped together a couple of arrangements. We literally showed up at Curtis on a Saturday afternoon. We didn't tune. We didn't read through it. We didn't practice anything. We literally hit record and just read everything straight down. Hit stop. They sent me the file. I put together a little mix of like a 30-second little teaser, and I started reaching out to churches. And within like less than a day later, I had us booked for our first ever gig. It was an Easter gig at a church that we ended up playing for several years, and that was how the New City Brass got going.
That's awesome.
We've done stuff at like the Kimmel Center, Oregon Day, and Verizon Hall, which is unbelievably not Wanamaker organ. What is that one called? Whatever the Kimmel Center organ is called, I'm totally blanking. Oh, Fred J. Cooper Memorial Organ. And so like it's unbelievably cool to play on that stage as a brass quintet. I mean, like the only other quintet that probably ever has played on that stage regularly was like, I mean, the Canadian Brass has played there. That's all I know of. But it's so like we got to play on the Kimmel stage with that big organ. We've played at conferences before. I mean, it's a very cool thing that I don't spend as much time with now, but we still do gigs throughout the year for sure.
So I'm looking forward to getting your book, and I will definitely put links at the bottom of this podcast for all the listeners so they can easily access your website and the book's website and all that. And thank you for your efforts on the Internet. I gain a lot of information by checking out your blog, and I look forward to your book, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, Sean, this is a real pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me on. It was really fun.
Okay, Seth. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks.
For more about Seth Haines' book, Break Into the Scene, his professional services, or his brass group, please visit the links below this podcast. And thanks for listening.